I never thought I would be the kind of woman who would marry without love. When I was younger, I believed in fairy tales. I believed that love was loud, powerful, and impossible to ignore. I believed I would feel it in my chest, like fire, like certainty. I believed my heart would know before my mind ever had to decide. But life does not always follow the stories we grow up with. Sometimes, life becomes about survival, about safety, about choosing what hurts the least. I was 27 when I said yes. Not because my heart was ready, but because my life felt tired of waiting. People around me kept saying the same things. He's a good man. He respects you. He will take care of you. Love comes after marriage. At first, I resisted. I told myself I wanted passion, connection, that deep feeling of knowing someone was my person. But slowly, exhaustion replaced hope. I was tired of being asked when I would settle down. Tired of watching friends move forward while I stayed still. Tired of explaining that I was waiting for something I couldn't describe. And then he came into my life. He was calm, stable, kind in ways that were quiet but constant. He remembered my coffee order. He asked about my work. He listened when I spoke, even when my words were small and unimportant. He was everything people call husband material. And yet my heart stayed silent. When he proposed, my hands shook. Not from happiness, from confusion. I stood there with a ring in front of me and felt two voices fighting inside my chest. One said, "This is safe, this is good, this is what everyone wants for you." The other whispered, "But this is not love." I ignored the whisper, because the whisper was lonely, and loneliness is scary. So I said yes. On my wedding day, everyone smiled. My mother cried happy tears. My father hugged me like he had finally completed his duty. My friends said I looked beautiful and lucky. Lucky. That word followed me all day. I wore a white dress that felt heavier than it should have. My makeup was perfect. My smile was practiced. When I walked toward him, he looked at me like I was his entire future. His eyes were full of hope. Mine were full of questions. When he held my hands, his were warm. Mine were cold. Not because I was nervous, but because I was empty. That was the first moment I realized what I had done. I had entered a promise without love. And promises without love are dangerous. But it was too late to turn back. That night, when we were alone, he was gentle, careful, respectful. He gave me space without being asked. He treated me like something precious. And that kindness almost broke me. Because how do you tell a good man that you chose him for safety, not love? Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. From the outside, our marriage looked peaceful. We did not fight. We did not argue. We did not hurt each other. But inside me, something was dying quietly. Every morning he said, "Good morning, love." And every morning, I answered with a smile that felt borrowed. Every night, he held my hand in his sleep. And every night, I lay awake, wondering when honesty would finally become louder than fear. I kept telling myself love would grow. That marriage was a seed, and love was the tree that would come later. But love does not grow in silence. Love grows in truth. And I had planted my life in a lie. At first, I tried to convince myself that love was not always dramatic. That maybe I was expecting too much. That maybe calm was better than passion. People say marriage is about compromise, about understanding, about choosing each other even on boring days. So I tried to become the woman everyone said I should be. Grateful, content, satisfied. I cooked his favorite meals. I kept the house clean. I listened when he spoke about his work. I smiled when his family praised me. From the outside, I was a perfect wife. From the inside, I felt like I was disappearing. He would look at me and say, "You make my life peaceful." And my heart would whisper, "I am lying to you." I began to live carefully. Like every movement had to be controlled. Like every word had to be chosen. Like every smile had to be measured. Because one wrong look, one honest sigh, one moment of weakness could expose the truth I was hiding. Sometimes He would come home tired and rest his head on my shoulder. Just for a moment. Just for comfort. I would freeze. Not because I did not care, but because I did not know how to give what he needed. Love should flow naturally. Mine felt forced. At night, I would stare at the ceiling and ask myself, how long can a person live like this? Not unhappy. Not happy. Just empty. He never complained. Never pressured me. Never questioned my distance. And that made it worse. Because if he had been cruel, I could have blamed him. If he had been careless, I could have hated him. But he was gentle. And gentleness is heavy when you cannot return it. One evening, we were sitting on the couch watching TV. The room was quiet. Comfortable. He suddenly asked, "Do you ever regret marrying me?" My heart stopped. I looked at him. His face was calm, but his eyes were searching. "No," I answered quickly. It was the fastest lie I had ever told. He smiled, relieved. "I just wanted to be sure," he said. But I was not sure. I had never been sure. That night, I cried in the bathroom with the water running. So he would not hear me. So he would not ask questions. Because questions lead to answers. And answers lead to endings. I looked at my reflection and whispered, "What kind of woman are you?" The mirror did not answer. But my heart did. A woman who chose fear over truth. A woman who chose safety over love. Days passed like this. Slow. Heavy. I felt like I was carrying a secret that was growing bigger every day. A secret that was no longer just hurting me. It was hurting him too. One afternoon, he surprised me with flowers. No special occasion. Just because. "I thought of you," he said, smiling. I took them in my hands and felt my chest tighten. Not from happiness. From guilt. Flowers are supposed to make you feel loved. They made me feel like a criminal. That night, I placed them beside the bed and stared at them. They were alive. Bright. Full of color. And I felt dead inside. I realized something painful then. I was not just lying to him. I was stealing his future. Every day I stayed silent. I took another piece of the life he deserved. He deserved a woman who loved him fully. Who chose him with her heart, not her fear. And I was not her. I had married without love. And slowly, quietly, that decision was destroying me from the inside. There are moments in life when truth stops being an idea and becomes a weight. For me, that moment came when I realized my silence was no longer protecting him. It was hurting him. I began to see it in small ways. In the way he looked at me when I was quiet for too long. In the way he asked, "Are you okay?" more often. In the way his smile had started to hesitate before reaching his eyes. He was sensing something. Not clearly, but enough to feel the distance growing. One evening, he came home tired and sat beside me on the couch. He did not turn on the TV. He did not check his phone. He just sat. "Can I ask you something?" he said. My heart tightened. "Yes," I replied. "Do you feel close to me?" That question felt like a knife. Not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. I looked at my hands. "Yes," I said softly. Another lie. But this one hurt more than all the others. He nodded slowly, as if trying to believe me. "I sometimes feel like I'm losing you," he admitted. "Like you're here, but not really here." I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to tell him everything. But fear held my tongue. "You're tired," I said. "Work has been stressful." He smiled weakly. "Maybe." But we both knew that wasn't the real reason. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his words in my mind. "I feel like I'm losing you." I thought about the future. About years of this quiet pain. About children, routines, birthdays, anniversaries. A whole life built on something untrue. I realized something terrifying. If I stayed silent, I would not just be unhappy. I would become cruel. Not with words, but with time. Because wasting someone's love is a kind of cruelty. The next morning, I looked at him differently. Not as my husband. but as a man who trusted me with his heart. And I was breaking that trust every day. I started pulling away emotionally. Not because I wanted to, but because guilt made closeness unbearable. When he hugged me, I felt heavy. When he kissed my forehead, I felt shame. Love felt like debt, and I had nothing to pay with. One afternoon, I sat alone in the bedroom and cried. Not quietly, not carefully. For the first time, I let myself feel how wrong everything was. I can't do this anymore, I whispered. I can't live inside a lie. That was the first time I admitted it out loud. The truth didn't free me, but it made me brave. From that day, I started preparing myself. Not to leave. Not to fight. To speak. I knew once I said it, nothing would be the same. But I also knew silence had already destroyed too much. I watched him over the next few days. The way he laughed. The way he spoke about plans. The way he believed in us. And each time, my heart felt heavier. Because love given without truth is not love. It is illusion. I had married without love. And now, I had to choose between two pains. The pain of honesty, or the pain of continuing a lie. For the first time since my wedding day, I chose honesty. Waited 3 days before I spoke. Not because I was planning my words, but because I was gathering courage. Courage is not loud. It doesn't arrive with confidence. It comes quietly, when you are more afraid of staying the same than of changing everything. On the third evening, he came home early. He placed his keys on the table and smiled at me. I missed you today, he said. Those words almost broke me, because I knew what I was about to do. Can we talk? I asked. He looked surprised, but nodded. Of course. We sat on the couch. The same couch where we had shared hundreds of small, quiet moments. Moments that looked peaceful from the outside. Moments that were slowly killing me inside. I stared at my hands. I need you to listen, I said. And I need you not to interrupt. He leaned forward slightly. Okay. My heart was racing. My mouth felt dry. I've been lying, I whispered. He froze. About what? He asked gently. About us, I said. About how I feel. About what I gave you when I said yes. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. I didn't marry you because I was in love, I continued. I married you because I was tired. Because you were safe. Because everyone said love would come later. He stared at me, not understanding yet. I kept waiting for love to grow, I said. But it never did. And I was too afraid to admit it. Silence filled the space between us. Not the comfortable silence we were used to. This was sharp. Alive. So you don't love me? He asked. His voice was calm. And that was what hurt the most. I care about you deeply, I said. I respect you. I admire you. But I never felt in love. I saw something in his eyes break. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. I gave you my whole heart, he said softly. And you were never really here. Tears filled my eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, I said. I just didn't know how to be honest without destroying everything. He looked away. You already did, he whispered. That sentence felt like a knife. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. He stood up slowly and walked toward the window. I thought maybe I wasn't enough, he said. I thought I needed to try harder. My chest tightened. You were more than enough, I cried. You were everything good. I was the one who was empty. He shook his head. Then why did you stay? He asked. Because I was afraid. Because I was weak. Because I didn't want to be alone. But I did not say that. I stayed because I hoped love would come, I whispered. He turned back to me. Hope built on a lie is still a lie, he said. We stood there, facing the truth that should have been spoken before we ever said our vows. I need time, he said quietly. I need to understand how my whole life became something that wasn't real. I nodded. You deserve space, I said. That night, we slept in different rooms. Not in anger. Not in hatred. In heartbreak. I lay alone in the guest room and stared at the ceiling. I had finally been honest. But honesty did not feel like freedom. It felt like loss, because I had broken the heart of a good man. The next morning, the house felt unfamiliar. Not because anything had changed physically, but because the truth had entered it. Truth changes the air in a room. It makes every sound heavier, every step louder. I woke up early, not because I was rested, but because my heart would not let me sleep. For the first time since our marriage, I did not wake up beside him. The space felt strange, lonely, but honest. I went to the kitchen and made tea. 1 cup, not 2. That small detail made my chest ache. For so long, I had lived in pairs. 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 lives. Now, even the silence had changed its shape. He came out later. His eyes were tired, red. We stood in the kitchen like 2 strangers who shared too much history to look away. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning," I replied. There was no anger in his voice, only exhaustion. We did not speak more than that. Not because there was nothing to say, but because there was too much. That day passed slowly. We moved around each other carefully, like people afraid of breaking something already broken. In the evening, he packed a small bag. "I'm going to stay with my brother for a while," he said. Not as punishment, not as threat, as survival. I nodded. "You should." He paused at the door. "Was any part of it real?" he asked. "Any part of us?" I swallowed. "Yes," I said honestly. "Your love was real. Your care was real. My respect was real. My gratitude was real. But not love," he said. "No," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "That's the hardest part," he said. Everything was real, except the one thing that mattered most. Then he left. The door closed softly. Not like an ending, like a wound. I sat on the floor and cried. Not the quiet crying I was used to. Not the careful kind. The kind that shakes your body. The kind that empties your chest. Because now there was no pretending left. Only consequences. Days turned into weeks. We did not speak much. Only practical messages. About bills. About mail. About small things. Never about feelings. I started living alone. Not just physically. Emotionally. I moved into a small apartment closer to my work. 1 bedroom. 1 window. 1 chair. It felt empty, but honest. At night, the silence was louder than before. But it was not filled with lies. It was filled with accountability. I missed him. Not with romantic longing, but with regret. I missed his kindness, his patience, the way he loved without conditions. And that hurt more than missing a lover ever could. Because I had lost something rare. Not love, but purity. One evening, I sat by the window and whispered. I did this. Not with shame. With acceptance. I had married without love. And now I was learning how heavy truth can be. But also how freeing. Living alone taught me things marriage never did. In marriage, I was protected by routine. By the presence of another person. By the illusion that I was not responsible for my own happiness. In loneliness, there was nowhere to hide. Every morning, I woke up in a quiet room that held only my breath and my thoughts. No one to greet. No one to disappoint. No one to lie to. At first, it felt like punishment. Then slowly, it began to feel like truth. I started noticing myself again. What I liked. What I feared. What I had buried to become acceptable. I realized how often I had shaped my life around expectations. Not desire. Not passion. Not courage. Just what was safe. I went for long walks after work. Not to escape, but to understand. I walked past couples holding hands. Families laughing. People living in versions of love I had never truly known. Sometimes it hurt. Sometimes it taught. I stopped asking why love had not come to me. I started asking why I had not chosen myself. One night, I opened an old notebook. pages filled with dreams from years ago. Travel, writing, living freely, being brave. I had forgotten that woman. Marriage had not stolen her. Fear had. I wrote again for the first time in years. Not stories. Confessions. I was not weak for wanting safety, but I was wrong for calling it love. I did not destroy him because I was cruel. I destroyed him because I was afraid. I am not evil, but I must be accountable. Each word felt like a small release. One evening, I received a message from him. Not angry. Not emotional. Just, I hope you're okay. I stared at the screen for a long time. I wanted to apologize again. I wanted to explain. I wanted to undo everything. But some things cannot be undone. I'm trying to be, I replied. I hope you are too. That was all. We were no longer part of each other's healing. We were only witnesses to each other's survival. I joined a small therapy group. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand my patterns. Why I chose comfort over truth. Why I feared loneliness more than dishonesty. Why I silenced my own needs. Healing was not romantic. It was uncomfortable. It was slow. It was honest. And honesty was something I was learning for the first time. One day, my therapist asked me, if you could speak to your younger self, what would you say? I closed my eyes. Don't confuse safety with love. And don't sacrifice truth to avoid loneliness. That sentence stayed with me. I was no longer trying to forgive myself quickly. I was trying to forgive myself deeply. Because shallow forgiveness ignores responsibility. Deep forgiveness accepts it and grows from it. I was not proud of my past, but I was no longer running from it. I was becoming someone who could look at her mistakes and say, this happened, and I will not repeat it. Healing did not arrive like a miracle. It came in small, quiet moments. Like the first time I laughed without feeling guilty. Like the first time I woke up without replaying the past in my head. Like the first time I said my own name and felt connected to it again. I started cooking for myself. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I lit candles on the table. Not for romance. For peace. I was learning how to exist without performing. Without pretending. Without hiding. One evening, while washing dishes, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. For the first time in months, I did not see a broken woman. I saw a tired one. But tired women can still become strong. I remembered how I used to believe love was something someone gave you. Now I understood that love also meant being honest with yourself. You cannot love others if you keep lying to your own heart. I stopped thinking of myself only as the woman who married without love. I started seeing myself as the woman who learned why honesty matters. That shift changed everything. One weekend, I went to the ocean alone. I stood near the water and let the wind touch my face. The waves were loud, constant, fearless. I whispered, I am allowed to start again. Not with someone else. With myself. I did not want romance. I did not want distraction. I wanted alignment. I wanted my life to match my truth. Back home, I cleared old things. Photos. Notes. Objects that held a version of me I was no longer living. Not with anger. With respect. That chapter had shaped me. It had hurt me. It had taught me. It did not deserve hatred. It deserved closure. Sometimes I still thought of him. Not as my husband, but as a man who loved sincerely. I hoped he would find someone who could return that love without fear. I did not wish to be part of that future. I only wished it for him. That was the purest apology I could give. One night, as I lay in bed, I realized something simple. For the first time, I was not waiting for love to arrive. I was becoming someone who could choose it honestly when it did. That was hope. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just real. Hope does not feel like happiness at first. It feels like space. Like breathing without pressure. Like waking up without fear. I started to understand that my story was not about failing at marriage. It was about finally choosing truth. For so long, I had believed love was something that happened to you. Now I knew it was something you had to be brave enough to accept. I went back to school part-time, not because I needed a new career, but because I needed to feel alive again. To remember that I was more than someone's wife, more than someone's mistake. Sitting in a classroom with strangers felt strange at first, but it also felt free. No one knew my past. No one expected anything from me. I was just a woman learning again. One afternoon, a classmate asked, "What made you start over?" I paused. "Honesty," I said. It was the truest answer I had ever given. I began writing again. Not to tell stories, but to release mine. Every page was a confession. Every sentence a small step toward forgiveness. I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of choosing myself. Writing did not erase my guilt, but it gave it shape. And shaped pain is easier to carry than silent pain. Sometimes, late at night, I still felt sadness. Not regret. Not longing. Just a quiet memory of a life that had been different. I let myself feel it. I did not push it away. Because healing is not about forgetting. It is about remembering without breaking. One evening, while walking home, I saw a couple arguing on the sidewalk. Their voices were loud. Their emotions real. Messy. Alive. And I thought, at least they were honest. Love does not have to be perfect. It has to be real. I no longer wanted a peaceful lie. I wanted a difficult truth. That was my growth. Months later, I stood in front of a mirror and smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was proud. Proud that I had chosen truth. Proud that I had not stayed silent. Proud that I had learned, even if the lesson was painful. I whispered, "I married without love." And it destroyed me from inside. But it also rebuilt me from the outside. My story did not end in romance. It ended in clarity. And clarity is its own kind of love. One morning, I woke up and realized something simple. I was no longer running. Not from my past. Not from my mistakes. Not from my own truth. For a long time, my life had been about avoiding pain. Avoiding loneliness. Avoiding judgment. Avoiding difficult conversations. Now, my life was about facing things gently. I started to trust myself again. Not completely. Not perfectly. But enough to take small steps without fear. I trusted that I would not make the same mistake twice. Because now, I understood the difference between comfort and love. Comfort is quiet. Love is alive. Comfort does not challenge you. Love changes you. Comfort protects you from pain. Love teaches you how to survive it. I met new people through my classes and therapy group. Not for romance. Just for connection. Simple conversations. Shared coffee. Laughter without expectation. It felt light. Because nothing was forced. One evening, a woman in my group said something that stayed with me. "You didn't fail at love. You learned how important honesty is to love." I carried that sentence with me. Because for the first time, my story did not feel like shame. It felt like wisdom. I stopped hiding my past. When people asked about my marriage, I did not pretend anymore. I said, "It taught me what love is not." And that was enough. I did not need to justify myself. I did not need to defend my pain. It was mine. And I respected it. One afternoon, I walked past a wedding store. White dresses in the window. Flowers. Lights. Once, that sight would have hurt me. Now, it only reminded me of one thing. Marriage is not a destination. Love is. And love begins with truth. I did not wish to marry again quickly. Not because I feared love, but because I honored it. Love deserved my whole heart. Not my fear. Not my exhaustion. Not my loneliness. Only my honesty. That was the promise I made to myself. If love ever came again, I would meet it with courage. Not compromise. I would choose it with certainty. Not desperation. I would say yes. only when my heart spoke before my fear. That night, I wrote in my notebook, I am no longer afraid of being alone. I am afraid of being untrue. And that fear was healthy. It meant I had grown. It meant my story, though painful, had given me something powerful, the ability to choose myself, without guilt, the ability to love honestly, without fear, the ability to, without pretending. And that, for the first time, felt like freedom. Freedom did not mean my life was suddenly full of joy. It meant my life was finally honest. There is a difference. Joy is loud. Freedom is quiet. Joy celebrates. Freedom breathes. I started waking up without that heavy feeling in my chest. Not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was fake anymore. I organized my small apartment slowly. Not like a house. Like a home. I placed a plant near the window. I bought soft lamps. I hung a picture that reminded me of calm. These small things mattered. They were proof that I was choosing myself. Some nights, loneliness still came. Not the painful kind. The thoughtful kind. The kind that asks you, who are you now? And I was learning the answer. I was a woman who had made a mistake. A big one. But I was also a woman who faced it. I was not a victim. I was not a villain. I was human. One day, I received a message from him again. I started therapy, he wrote. I'm trying to understand everything. My heart paused. Not with hope. With respect. I'm glad, I replied. You deserve peace. That was all. We were no longer connected by marriage. But we were connected by growth. And that felt enough. I realized something beautiful then. Sometimes love does not mean staying. Sometimes it means leaving honestly. I started volunteering on weekends. Not because I wanted to be busy, but because I wanted to give without guilt. Helping others reminded me that my heart still worked. That it was capable of care, empathy, and connection. I was not broken. I was healing. One evening, while walking home, I noticed how the city lights reflected in puddles after rain. Small things. Beautiful things. I stopped rushing. I stopped escaping. I let moments exist. And in those quiet moments, I finally felt something I had never felt in my marriage. Peace without pretending. I whispered to myself, I did not marry wrong because I was bad. I married wrong because I was afraid. And now I am brave. That bravery was not dramatic. It did not look like strength in movies. It looked like choosing honesty every day. Even when it was uncomfortable. Even when it was lonely. That was my victory. Not over him. Not over marriage. Over fear. Used to think my story would end with love. With a new beginning. With someone holding my hand and proving that everything had a reason. But my story ended in something deeper than love. It ended in truth. One quiet evening, I sat by my window and watched the sky turn orange and soft blue. The world did not look dramatic. It looked calm. And for the first time, my heart matched it. I realized I was no longer waiting for anyone to save me. I was no longer hoping that someone would make my life feel meaningful. I had already done that myself. I had faced my mistake. I had accepted my fear. I had carried my guilt. And I had chosen honesty instead of comfort. That was strength. I thought about the woman I used to be. The woman who said yes because she was tired. The woman who chose safety because she was afraid of loneliness. The woman who believed love could be forced into existence. I did not hate her. I forgave her. Because she did the best she could with the courage she had at that time. Now I was different. Now I knew love was not something you settle for. It is something you feel in your bones. It is something that brings peace, not pressure. Truth, not confusion. Joy, not fear. If love ever came again, I would not accept it out of exhaustion. I would not accept it out of loneliness. I would accept it because my heart recognized it. And if it never came, I was still whole. That was the most powerful lesson of my life. I married without love, and it destroyed me from inside. But it also rebuilt me. It taught me courage. It taught me responsibility. It taught me that my truth matters. My story did not end with romance. It ended with self-respect. And self-respect is a stronger foundation than any promise. I closed my eyes and whispered, I am no longer afraid of being alone. I am afraid of living without honesty. And that fear was healthy. That fear was wisdom. Because love should never be chosen in silence. And a heart should never be given without certainty. This was not a tragic ending. It was a powerful one. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real. And for the first time in my life, I was not surviving. I was living. Not every story ends in romance. Some end in strength.